Welcome to International Relations and Global Studies. This is Sophia Barkett, your instructor. Today we're looking at the main topics that we'll be studying in the course. So let's look at those. First, let me talk a little bit about what international relations is. First, it is a broad subfield within political science. But what do we study in that field? So, we know that in comparative politics, we study the political system within states, or what we call countries. So we look inside the state to understand the political ideology, the type of governance, the kind of civil society they have, how do they change power or authority at the state level. And we don't do that in international relations. In IR, we are focused on how states behave with one another. We also look at important non-state actors and how they behave at the international level. First, let's look at some types of theories that we'll study in the course. The main three types of theories that we'll look at are realist, IR theories, liberal theories, and constructivist theories. And within realist theories, we'll look at classical realism, neo-realism. Within liberalism, we'll understand classical liberalism and neoliberal institutionalism. We'll touch on Marxism and feminist theories of IR. We'll touch a little bit on post-structuralist ideas and concepts, a little bit about post-colonialism. We won't really talk about postmodernism. Environmentalist theories are important in this class. We'll look at some of that in the course. Research question. Each theory that I just named asks a specific kind of question or is interested generally on these kinds of questions. And this is what makes each of these different types of theories relevant. So realists are interested in why wars happen between or among states. Liberals do have some interest in why wars happen, but they're also concerned with peacetime activities. Constructivists want to understand how states came to view each other in the way that they do. Why do some states like each other and some states dislike each other? So they question how states form ideas about each other, and they examine social institutions that shape such thought. Marxists are interested in the economic relations underpinning activity at the state, but also international level. And they want to understand the role of the state and the role of non-state actors. They're also interested in looking inward, right? As I mentioned, they want to understand economic relations at the global level, but also looking inside the state. Feminists want to know if women are decision makers at the international level. And how can they become decision makers at the international level? They look inside the state. Where are women in the state? Where are they in civil society? And we'll look at these ideas of state versus civil society and all of that in some depth. Some are interested in broader matters. So sometimes you'll see where the feminist interest is more towards questions of equality, and sometimes you'll see other kinds of interests. Post-structuralists want to study how international governing institutions organize the behavior of states and non-state actors in the service of capitalism. They're very much interested in how the global society is functioning. What are the leading ideas and knowledge systems? So they very much want to understand how everybody is brought under the system, basically. Post-colonialists explore how colonialism affected how we think about each other. So they would argue that colonial powers impacted through literary discourses how colonized populations were viewed and vice versa. And that this historical relationship cannot be ignored when looking at international relations. Postmodernists would, they're kind of on the one of the extremes in the sense that they would say all other major narratives or theories of IR have been unsuccessful in explaining certain things. So they are saying that, leave the larger theoretical narratives out. Sometimes other kinds of explanations are necessary. Environmentalists are interested in the way resources are used around the planet and how that impacts the quality of air, water, land, basically our environment, right? And so they bring to attention how capitalism and industrialization are affecting the planet. The international system of states. In some of the theories, you'll notice that states are treated as unitary actors. In the sense, in the news, sometimes you will hear statements like US blocks trade with China. Saudi Arabia declares war on Yemen. So it's as though the state is acting as one unit, just like you would imagine the atom. Atom, before the idea of, atom can be destroyed, acting as a unitary actor. In some theories of IR, scholars propose looking inside states to see what kind of political ideologies dominate their system. So for the US, they would look at liberal democracy and capitalism. In the case of China, you would consider Marxism and state capitalism, but actually, you could say the Chinese economy is basically capitalist with the facade of, Marxism in the political system. Saudi Arabia, on the other hand, is a theocracy where you have the rule of law is basically decided by interpretations of religious text. And capitalism is the dominant economic system. Some scholars of IR look at personalities of leaders. Who are the leaders? That to them is important when trying to understand international relations. Is it Nixon? The Nixon administration had a particular kind of foreign policy. Is it Carter? The Carter administration had a completely, 180 kind of from Nixon. And then you have Reagan, Bush, Senior having similar kinds of foreign policy. And then during the Clinton administration, some of the matters stay the same, some change. Bush Jr., his administration is, defined by September 11. And so you have the entire infrastructure of fighting terrorism and administration's attitude towards, the international uh, system is, I think, more along, the lines of Reagan, Bush Sr., and then you have the Obama administration, you have Trump, and you have Biden, right? So these scholars are very much interested in who's in power and how they lead. Behavior of states. As I mentioned earlier, the IR scholars are very interested in trying to understand how states behave. So we see that realists are interested in the question of war, but some are also interested in questions of foreign policy, diplomacy. How can you create peace? Um, in what ways can you influence foreign policies of states? Cooperation. Many scholars examine the fact that, after World War II, we have a long period of peacetime. And in that time, we see a certain level of uh, cooperation among states. We see the rise of international organizations. We have the World Trade Organization today. We have the World Bank. And so we see all kinds of cooperation through international organizations. We also have a lot of cultural exchange. We have students from different countries coming to the US and vice versa. You have international media. You have people learning different languages and, so much activity on YouTube and on the internet. So you see that we don't require to travel anymore. We can meet each other in different ways. There's also the matter of international development. So we look at the United Nations Development Program, we'll look at other kinds of organizations engaged in the topic of international development. Non-state actors. So as mentioned before, IR looks at not just the actions of state actors, but also non-state actors. So what are these? A type of state actor could be a corporation. You could also have cartels. You could have international organizations. You could have non-governmental organizations. So we'll look at all kinds of actors. And they become very important because, as I mentioned, after World War II, we've seen a significant increase in activity. You have the expansion of corporations like Walmart into global companies. And in fact, Walmart's annual revenues are in the top 20 as far as the gross domestic product of countries. Walmart is producing more each year than some countries in Europe, such as Sweden, Finland, and Turkey. So cartels are also important, and we will look at those things. Basically, these are companies that have decided to work together, and they have some political agenda. They have some economic impact, but they have political agendas. Lastly, non-government organizations, also known as nonprofits in the US, such as the International Red Cross. You have the World Health Organization. You have, United Nations types agencies. You have CARE working, CARE is an organization that works all over the planet. They're usually attending to maternal child health type activities. So all kinds of activity happening involving non-governmental organizations. Lastly, we'll look at the activities of groups of people and how they are important in international relations. So here, look at it. You have like migrants and refugees, you have terrorism, you have also social movements. And many of these issues are domestic politics related to domestic policies, right? For example, immigration is how a country deals with immigration policy is how a country would deal with the issue of refugees and migrants. But they become international issues because these people are crossing the border. And so you see that international relations is more than just what states are doing and big institutions or corporations are doing. It's also about what people are doing. Lastly, who is engaged in international relations? I would say, it could be anybody, not just state actors or the government officials, right? It could be business communities. People at Walmart might be involved in international relations. People working in non-governmental organizations, such as the World Health Organization, might be. It could even be somebody you know who is a health expert working at these organizations. Even people who are collecting data on healthcare at the local level in the US are part of international relations because they might be providing the national data that's then used by the government and then shared with the United Nations and becomes part of international health statistics. So, all kinds of policy implications from there, right? And also, we just mentioned that people are involved in international relations. You have social movements. So you can have people reacting to different kinds of policies that affect, you know, uh, people across the border. So not just in your country, but across the country. So you could have people protesting, war or debt collection by the International Monetary Fund or something, right? So let's look at all of this over the semester, and I hope to hear from you all soon.